Sausage.
Hello everyone, this is Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Marc, tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This episode is all about Yakuza Kiwami, the remake of the original PS2 game where you play as Kiryu and Kiryu do for a little girl whose mother has gone missing. Or is she? Drama ensues and there's a sub-story about Pooh cause Yakuza gonna do what it's gonna do. Yakuza Kiwami originally came out in the States on August 29th, 2017 for PlayStation 4 with a PC release 2 years later and an Xbox One release a year after that. I played the game on Xbox, but own it on all platforms because I'm just special like that. Special, in this case, means stupid. A PlayStation 3 version also exists, but that version never made its way out of Japan. So sadly, we Westerners will never truly experience the emotional engine that drives Kiwami's story. It is good to be back. It's been over a year since I played Yakuza 0, and I knew I missed the series, but I didn't know how much I missed it until I returned with Yakuza Kiwami. Now, technically, I've already played Kiwami. That was 15 years ago when it was Kiwami-less and featured English voice acting instead of the original Japanese dub. What became clear immediately was that I remembered very little, if anything, from the original game. Kiryu taking the fall for a murder he didn't commit, the little girl who becomes a significant part of Kiryu's life, the way Majima is treated like Nemesis from Resident Evil, I remember none of it. That is, in part, because at least some of it, actually a fair amount of it, is brand new. Majima's newfound confrontational presence when he's roaming the streets, hiding under traffic cones, staging elaborate zombie invasions, constantly looking to fight Kiryu was not a part of the original game, and I can understand why. Majima Everywhere, as the system is so lovingly called in-game, can be annoying when you just want to get shit done and Majima keeps interrupting you. And while you can ignore Majima and run away, the only way to unlock many skills in the Dragon of Dojima fighting style is by fighting Majima. The most egregious example of a skill lock behind Majima's paywall is the inability to fill up your heat meter when using the Dragon of Dojima style until after you fought with Majima way too many times, like 24 or so too many times. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this added system for the most part, but I also love Majima, so it was just a treat getting to see him more often than usual, even though there was little unique dialogue to go with these interactions. Basically, how much you like Majima Everywhere is solely dependent on how much you like Majima, but then again, if you like Yakuza, you like Majima. So I doubt any fan of the series will have a problem with more Majima because all true Yakuza fans know there's no such thing as too much Majima. He should really just be called Morjima because all I want is more Jima. Ha 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 ha. In addition to Majima Everywhere, there's also new story content for Nishiki, Kiryu's best friend, and the catalyst for a lot of what happens in Kiwami, a ditching of the English dub in favor of the Japanese dub, which is mildly disappointing because it would have been nice to still have the English dub available as an option for historical purposes, and additional fighting styles ripped straight from Yakuza 0. The visuals are also vastly improved, of course, but as you can see, Kiwami is more than just a fresh coat of paint. Despite all the new additions, the core story and many of the sub-stories are still the same, and in this regard, my amnesia was a blessing. The twists and turns of the main story, the delightfully stupid sub-stories, the minigames, some of which are ridiculous, I experienced everything as if it were for the first time, and it made my playthrough enjoyable from start to finish. It is the world and the stories within it that makes Yakuza special. How many games have you finding cards for a game that's basically rock, paper, scissors, where scantily clad women in insect cosplay play out your actions in digitized form? How many games ask you to help a man who took a massive shit in a public restroom without making sure he had enough toilet paper first? How many games have you competing with other characters as part of an interview to find out who the most baddest of dads is? These are just a few tangents you can choose to engage with but are never forced to. However, it is all these little stories that make Yakuza the special game and series it is. But while all the stories, big and small, are what you're experiencing, fighting, and more fighting is almost exclusively what you're doing. The combat, which makes up the majority of the gameplay, remains the weakest part and the last reason why anyone should decide to play or not play a Yakuza game. Is the combat fun to watch? Yes, seeing Kiryu swing a motorcycle around like it's nothing but a bag of apples never gets old, and every heat action is a joy to initiate and watch play out. However, that doesn't mean that combat can't be annoying, repetitive, and exhausting at the same time. I played through the game on normal, and given how basic the combat ultimately is, I should have and recommend playing the game on easy. Basic thugs were a breeze to deal with, while boss enemies and Majima were more of a hurricane thanks to their ability to block most attacks and dash around you like it was nothing. Not to mention their even more annoying ability to regenerate health twice per fight if you don't immediately hit them with the right heat action. I'm sure some will say the combat is incredibly deep, and maybe it is. Sure as shit are a lot of moves and abilities to unlock via one of the 4 massive skill trees, but no matter how much the game threw at me, I still found the combat to be little more than a button mashing feast. There's nothing wrong with shallow button mashing combat, but it can get tiring after hour 30 if you're like me and take your sweet ass time when playing Yakuza games. I'm not saying combat is bad, it's just not as fun to control as it is to watch. Issues with combat aside, Yakuza Kiwami is a fantastic game. If you like well-written stories filled with great characters and over-the-top action, Kiwami will satisfy in a way only Yakuza can. Whether you choose to focus on the main story or get lost in the world, its inhabitants, and all the weird things you can do within it, good times will be had because Yakuza Kiwami, nothing if not dynamite. Because, you know, good times. We are the good times. Dynamite. Right? That's a reference to the TV show. I think. I don't know. I didn't watch it. Maybe it's the wrong TV show. I don't know. Anyway, that will do it for this here episode of the Pixelated Sausage Podcast. Damn, I did it again. No, this is not that. This is Attack the Backlog. But Pixelated, I'll talk about that later. Once again, I am Marc. Y'all can find me on Twitter and pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. The site is not something I'm going to talk about right now because what I want to say is that if you'd like to see me stream games like Yakuza Kiwami, you can do so over at twitch.tv/PX Sausage. If you'd like to see the videos I make, like the one for this here episode of Attack the Backlog, you can do so over at youtube.com/Pixelated Sausage. Speaking of Pixelated Sausage, I was talking about it earlier, you know, the whole site thing. Put a dot and a comma after Pixelated Sausage. You've got what? What's that? What's that? PixelatedSausage.com? That's what you got? Is that what you said? That's right. You're right. That is what you get. PixelatedSausage.com, which is my site, and that is where you can find this podcast and the Pixelated Sausage Podcast, both of which are available on podcast services across the globe. You can also check out my art on the site, and if you see something you like, you can purchase a print of the piece you fancy. And if you fancy the site in general and anything that we do, please go over to patreon.com/PXS and support us that way. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.